Thanks for that kind introduction. Can you all hear me at the back?
Yes.
Yeah? Great. Yeah, facing up to climate reality. I'm going to level with you. It's not a very cheery talk. I'll start with an anecdote. I was in John Lewis recently. I wanted to buy some saucepans. I happened to find myself walking through the televisual department. And I hadn't been there for a while. I quite like John Lewis. It's owned by its employees. As big corporate stores go, it's not bad, it seems to me. I was kind of shocked. I was genuinely shocked by what I saw in the televisual department. These immense screens, the 3D screens, they were absolutely awesome, and some of them were kind of beautiful. And then it struck me, if as a society we were actually serious about reining in dangerous climate change, then those resources that are being poured into those TV screens would not be being poured into those TV screens. They would be being poured into things like renewable energy. And I want to ask you, how plausible do you think it is, how credible do you think it is to propose that that switch of resources is going to happen? It should happen. I want it to happen. As you've just heard in the intro, I'm in a number of organizations which are trying to make it happen. But would you honestly bet on it happening? The kind of thing that needs to happen is what President Franklin Roosevelt did during the Second World War in the United States. I love this story. Roosevelt and his team went to the American motor manufacturers and said to them, right, here's our plans for what you need to do to change what you're doing so that you can build the tanks we need to win this war. And the motor manufacturers looked at the plans and they responded to Roosevelt. They said, Mr. President, I don't think you understand. If we do this, we won't be able to build any cars for the next few years. And he replied, yeah, I don't think you've quite understood yet. That's the point. You're not going to be building any cars for the next few years. You're going to be building tanks so that we can win the war. A total change in priorities. That's what we need. It would be a brave person at this point to bet on it. So one of my messages here today is we have to be honest enough to contemplate the collapse of our society. This means many things. Some of them are responsibilities. For example, people have talked for a number of years about the possibility that nuclear power might be able to contribute to solving the climate problem. People have said, well, nuclear is lower carbon emissions than fossil fuels, so shouldn't we go nuclear? But once one starts to think that our society may be going to collapse, and I'm talking about within the lifetime of many people in this room, then nuclear goes from looking like a clever idea to an absolutely ridiculous liability. Nuclear power stations are on the coast. Has anyone heard of sea level rise? Nuclear power stations are on the coast because they need immense amounts of water to cool down their spent fuel rods. What happens if you don't keep them cool? Within a day, they will burn the fuel, the cooling pools dry, and they will spontaneously ignite, and they will burn for decades, spewing toxic waste into the atmosphere. That's what will happen if nuclear waste is not carefully protected. And in a society that has collapsed, we can no longer guarantee that kind of protection. We need to start to think about not building more nuclear power stations. We need to start to think about shutting down the ones we have and making that nuclear waste safe. Contemplating collapse means some good things too. It probabilifies a resurgence of community and a reacquaintance with the land, with nature. And to put it mildly, as already hinted, it means some very bad things. Unless we end consumer culture and the empire of advertising rapidly, unless we do that kind of transformation that I'm talking about and shut down that room in John Lewis and put that energy into saving our common future, well then millions, and more likely billions, will die. Almost certainly during your lifetimes, including probably some of you. It's hard to give a speech like this. It doesn't feel good. I feel bad, especially because so many of the audience are young persons. It feels cruel. It feels like I'm deflating your hopes. But you know, here I stand, I can do no other. It seems to me that the one thing that our generation, my generation, needs to do at this point in history, having failed to stop us from getting to this situation, is at least to level with everyone, especially with younger people, about the situation that we are now in. Some of you might think, well, we've heard this kind of thing before, doom and gloom, alarmism, crying wolf. Why should we believe any of this? Well, 3 points. Firstly, even if there's only a small chance that what I'm saying is correct, then you should still take it seriously. Because if what I'm talking about comes to pass, it's going to be absolutely catastrophic. And we need to be ready for that catastrophe. We need to prepare against it by, for example, doing what I said in relation to nuclear. Secondly, this is not just me making this stuff up. There are scientific reports coming out pretty much every week. Another massive one came out today from the UN, saying, basically, in slightly more judicious language, in slightly more toned-down diplomatic language, saying exactly what I'm saying to you this evening. You just have to join up the dots. They're saying, in more and more clear terms, if we do not make changes, enormous, unprecedented changes, very rapidly, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. And thirdly, I want you to do a little thought experiment. Imagine somebody saying, yeah, this kind of apocalypticism doesn't really get us anywhere, does it? We've heard it all before. It never comes to anything. Imagine somebody saying that in the latter stages of the Mayan Empire, or in the days before Easter Island collapsed, or in the latter days of the Icelandic colonization of Greenland. Interesting story, the Icelandic colonization of Greenland. Thousands upon thousands of Icelanders went to live in Greenland and founded what they thought would be a sort of a new country, a new civilization. They all died. That civilization ended. It collapsed. It's happened on quite significant scales in our history. There is no reason why we're immune to it. If you think we're immune to it, then consider another analogy. Consider the turkey that with each growing day, as it gets further into December, thinks, one more day under my belt, I'm more and more confident that I'm going to make it through to the new year. Let's not be turkeys. To conclude, industrial growth society is going to end. The project of globalization is going to end. The only question is whether we choose to end these things through a rapid and unprecedented great green transformation, or whether that ending is brutally forced upon us by a tortured nature. It feels unfair of me to lay this upon you, especially, as I say, the younger people in the room. But we are where we are. As you heard earlier, one of the most inspiring things that's happening right now is that young people around the world are going on strike from school because they're concerned that they're not going to have a future. It's going to happen in a big way here in Norwich tomorrow. We are where we are. I feel bad maybe because the leadership has passed from us to the younger generation, and that shows the failure of my generation. I hope with all my heart that you'll choose to devote yourselves, that we'll choose to devote ourselves to achieving the kind of transformation I've gestured at, without which, within your lifetimes, there'll be no more World Speech Days. Thank you.